As Linda mentioned earlier, our conference theme is resilience, and I have to agree. If there is ever an industry able to bounce back from disappointment, defeat, and extreme challenges, it's the hardwood industry. We're coming off the most extraordinary year, many of us still taking stock, getting a handle on where we are, evaluating what's next. So our first presenter, consultant coach and founder of Advancement Designs, Thomas Brush, aims to help with that. We all know the saying, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. As Tom sees it, the bigger the adversity, the greater the opportunity for personal and professional growth. Ready to join Tom and explore an overlooked pathway to achieve success? How about a big HMA welcome from Thomas Brush, consultant coach and founder of Advancement Designs.
And one of the first things, it was interesting because the first thing, Wayne came up to me and said, Matt, in a great accent, you're not going to share any of the stories you hear tonight, tomorrow. Well, let me take out my notes because I have them all down. No, honestly, I wouldn't do that because I think that those are value stories to share together. But in the back of my head, I also understood that we had the opportunity that night to learn a little bit more about what was real for each of us in the room. We were going to share in that setting our knowledge, our experience, and our perspective. All is unique. None of us have the exact same story. We all look at things differently. No two people in this room have had the exact same knowledge, experience, and perspective. So it's what's real. So often I think we get caught up in what's right. And when it's what's right, we start making judgments on that. We want to talk a little bit. I like to talk about what's real. And so, to me, as I think about resiliency, one of the things that I thought happened last year, we reached a point where the pandemic, as we all know, it was awful, and it impacted everyone. It was an obstacle for everyone. It wasn't something that just hit one industry or another, one country or another. It impacted all of us. And probably in our lifetime, we've never seen anything like it. And so with that, we really had to figure out, and I feel like people fell into one of three categories. The first category was those who thought the world was coming to an end. Everyone was going to get sick. Everyone was going to die. No one was going to be able to go outside. They were stuck. The second group of people were a group of people who pushed it aside. But this is going to be over in 6 weeks. We'll be back to normal. How many times did you hear that word from last year? We'll be back to normal shortly. We're just going to keep plowing ahead. And what I think those people found is they hit obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. Things that kept coming up because we couldn't do it the way we had always done. And we had to look for different ways to achieve what we were trying to achieve. And then there was that third group of people. The third group of people who stood there and said, I see this as an obstacle. And I understand how impactful it is. And I'm going to choose to move forward, to find an opportunity from within that obstacle. And so what I want to do a little bit today is help you look at some of the obstacles you face and figure out how you can find opportunities from within them. So to start off, I'm going to go with an example. I believe the slides work. Perfect. I want to share two stories of resiliency that I thought about this year. Because I truly believe one of the things about resiliency is that you find obstacles, you take obstacles and you turn them into opportunities. So the first one I want to talk about is the grocery industry. Clearly, you had people who needed food. You had people who didn't want to leave their house. You had businesses who were trying to figure out, well, how am I going to get employees in to not only stock our shelves, but also to be at the counter to serve people? How are we going to make that work? They could have easily said, and I know some grocery stores said, we can't figure it out. We don't know what to do. We're just going to stop. And then there were others. And I'm a big fan. Our local grocery store is Vikings. So for those of you who are on the East Coast, you understand. And part of what's real for me is I know that as our kids have grown up and we're looking to move, there are only two things that matter to my wife. Is do we wake up every morning with an opportunity to see a beautiful sunset over the horizon and sunrise? And Is there a Wegmans nearby that we can get to? Because if you've been to a Wegmans grocery store, you know there's no others. So the thing that Wegmans was able to do is they figured out, how do we set up the store differently? How do we restrict the number of people who come in so that it's manageable and it meets the guidelines that were put in front of us? They also said, you know what, we're probably not going to have as large a crowds because not everybody's going to want to come out. So we might not need as many staff. Well, what if we relooked at what our staff did? And rather than being the ones who stocked the shelves, they were the ones who stood there and said, okay, I'm going to do the grocery shopping for someone. So that either we deliver it or someone can drive up, we go out and hand them their groceries, and they're all set to go. Contactless. And they were able to turn that into a well-oiled machine. Something that allowed them to move forward. It also provided opportunities for other organizations, other businesses to stem up. If anybody's ever heard of Instacart, who in here has ordered through Instacart? Anybody? Few people. I actually took it up. I was bored. I was at home, and I'm like, I gotta get out of the house. I felt healthy, felt in good shape. I'll go out and shop for some people and deliver it to them. Something I thought I could do as a part of it. And I think each of those organizations looked at it and they said, what is the challenge that we were facing? It's the obstacle in front of us. How can we look at that differently? The other one is I have a client who's a travel agent. And like many industries, the travel agency was hit really hard. Their focus was on cruises and destination vacations. Not a lot of those things happened. Nobody wanted to get on a cruise at the time. And this person in this organization struggled. They were unsure of what to do. They couldn't figure out the next step. Really, they were grieving and worried that their business was completely going to fall apart. Well, instead, they dove into their business. They started to learn, well, what could I do differently? How could I share who and what I am and what I do in a different way? And what they realized was some of the greatest trips they had with their family was when they drove by car and they saw America through the car. So they took a trip and they journaled it and shared that with their audience. Like, these are some of the opportunities you could consider. They love Disney, so they went to Disney World. Got on a plane and chronicled, what is it like to be on a plane? What are the steps that Disney is taking to make sure that it was safe? And so what they found at the end of that was that they had an opportunity to move forward, that their business could continue, that just because the cruise lines were never bringing good news, just because people weren't traveling internationally, there were opportunities to continue to grow their business. And so I share those two stories because I think they are valuable about how we can look at the opportunities that or the obstacles that we have in front of us. And what are the steps we might be able to take to figure out how to move forward? And I sort of break them down into 4 key areas. Do we recognize it? Because that's an important piece of it, is understanding what it is. The second part is, when we do that, how do we respond to it? And how do we understand what we have done, how it has worked, and how might we do it differently? Usually when we do that, we realize we have to retool. And we have to gain different or new knowledge, experience, and perspective. And when we do all of those things, we come up with opportunities that will help us continue to move forward and accomplish what we want to accomplish. Now, I want to talk a little bit about challenges and obstacles. And I see them as in 2 different lights. There's external and internal. The external ones are ones that we typically have no control over. There are things that happen that just happen to us. They are roadblocks thrown in our way that we weren't controlling. And I know your industry is full of them. China tariffs, things going on with the climate change conversation, working with different generational staff, hiring staff, the minimum wage model, all of the things that are impacting your organization. And they are real. There is no doubt about it. The thing about external obstacles is that sometimes there's something we use to blame and make excuses because it's easy to do. It's about someone else. Someone else did or put in front of us something to block our way. So it's easy to blame it on that and just say, you know what, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to leave it over there and it's going to be fine. I just can't deal with it. There's nothing I can do that's going to change it. I actually believe there are some things you can do to change it. And interestingly enough, Bob just mentioned one of those ways that you can change external obstacles. The organization realized that the government was having and making laws that were impacting your organization. You could have sat back. You could have just sat there and said, there's nothing we can do about it. We don't control the government. They make the laws. They do what they want. There are other organizations packed with more money who can influence them greater. Rather, you chose to take and make an opportunity of that and create a pact. And because I was a fundraiser for most of my career, I'm going to say, if you haven't had a chance to talk to Bob about being a member and supporting the Federation, I'm sure that you will welcome every conversation. And what I also know is that one of the times we really want to invest in our business, in what we're trying to accomplish, is when we're struggling. Because we can choose to be all in and say, you know what, I know it's difficult, but the way to come out of it is to dive into it, to support an organization that's going to go out and try to have some impact on those things that I can't control. And so I would encourage you to see Bob. You're welcome, Bob, for the plug. Absolutely. Now let's talk a little bit about internal obstacles. And one of the things I find with internal obstacles, dive deep enough, we're willing to ask ourselves the question, many external obstacles are really internal.
That's George talking.
We're worried about being
Probably
wrong.
hearing Larry say,
It has to be
Robert's
perfect.
gone
We can't do this.
we miss all the time.
I want to make sure what I'm doing is right.
He thinks that's the way it is.
I'm worried about fear. I get overwhelmed. We all face all of these things every day.
I just left, but
How do we determine how we're going to move forward and try to address those?
days a week, and I mean.
Because they can keep us stuck. It's easy to do. As I mentioned earlier, I think 2/3 of the country was stuck from March till about June and had no idea what they were going to do. And another third thought, you know what? I'm not going to be stuck. I am going to choose to make a difference and figure out how I can move forward, even given the obstacles that stand in front of me. So now, as we think about that, one of the other pieces about resiliency is responding to what's in front of us and figuring out how to take the next step. Because in reality, you're not going to get to the bigger step until you take that first step. And to me, that's one of the most important steps that we can take. And I want to share a little bit of my 2020 resilience story before I'm going to ask you to think about yours. When 2020 hit, I do some public speaking. I do a lot of in-person presentations, workshop groups. I get together with organizations to help them figure out strategic plans and how they can work with their teams to make sure they're more effective. And that leaders are listening to team members, and team members are able to provide the feedback that they need to so that the organization can continue to grow. I saw that going away. And I was worried about what that's going to do for my business. I had taken this leap. I was all in on I was going to work for myself. I tried the other ways. I didn't want to go back to that. And I realized that a friend of mine was in the exact same spot. We did similar work, but it was different. And we were on a phone call once and we were talking about, like, what are we going to do? We were actually in that stuck place of saying, well, the pandemic has caused me to lose this much business, this many opportunities. And at one point we snapped out and said, we can talk about that as long as we want. It's not going to get us anywhere. We can blame the pandemic for the fact that our businesses have fallen apart, could fall apart. Or we could choose to move forward. And our choice on that day was to make a decision to move forward. And we felt that those people who do that, we did not have all the answers. There was no doubt about that. But all we knew was we had to take that first step. And our first step, as crazy as it may sound, for those of you who don't know Facebook Live, he and I said, you know what? We're going to be the people who are talking about how do we continue to move forward? How do we look at this pandemic and think about how does that change our business and how do we move it in a different direction? So we started doing a Facebook Live. You know what? We're going to do this every day. We don't know who's listening. We didn't even really care. I think it was as much about ourselves being committed to getting up and doing a show at 7:30 in the morning so we got our day started. Talking with someone else about the challenges that we were dealing with. And finding ways to express that so that it wasn't stuck in our head where most of our internal obstacles live.
That's huge.
And it allowed us to take action. And so we did that for a while. And before we knew it, we had people who were actually paying attention, much to our surprise. Two old white guys sitting there like, who cares? They actually listen. And we determined that the next step for that group was we need to get them together. We even came up with a name for them. We chose to call them renegades. People who were not part of the status quo, who were not just listening to the deafening noise of the echo chamber, just spouting out what everybody else was saying. That we were going to choose our own path and figure out how to move forward in that regard. So we created a Facebook group called the Ring of Renegades. Before we knew it, we had 300 people, 400. We were like, who are all these people? Where are they coming? Why are they listening? What they were doing is they were looking for a community to be a part of. Part of it could help talk about moving forward, not about all the challenges and blaming things that were going on. They couldn't control. And then we moved along and said, oh, you know what's happening? These people need more than that. Like they would like something more, something to help them one-on-one. So we created a membership group. Before we knew it, we had built a business. We had no idea that that's what we were going to do when we started. We were just trying to figure out how to move forward. We built a business, and my friend actually wrote a book about it. In a year, wrote a book talking about the renegade way and how business and organizations leaders can move forward. And what we found was that that was an opportunity that we had never thought about. But because we got together and worked it out, we were able to figure out how can we move forward. And I think you all have the opportunity to do the same thing. So what I'd like you to do for a moment, if you have a pen and paper and you want to write it down, you can. But I think it's important. What's your renegade story from 2020? Where did you show resilience this year? And if you look back on it and think about, like, what was the challenge that I was facing? And how did I then address that? Because I think if you can figure out how you did it for yourself, in that situation, you can figure out how to do it when the next obstacle arrives. And I guarantee you, they will arrive. We face them every day. Some are small, and some are really large. And it's how we then figure out how to address them will allow us to move forward. And I know you all have your success stories, your resilience stories, because you wouldn't be here if you weren't. The easy way would be to say, you know what, we're going to fold up. This family's business has been around forever. We just can't make it work. We're too worried about all the other things, the things that are holding us back. And so we're going to stop it because it might not work. Do I need to turn? Is it on now? Oh, sorry about that. Had it been off the whole time? Okay. Fortunately, I have a fairly booming voice usually. So I want you to consider that, and I want you to think about, really, what did you learn? Because I think it's important. Because what you are doing is actually telling your story. The story of who you were. The beauty of last night was I got to hear more about the life and celebrate the lives of Bob and his wife, Norm and Wayne. And really understand, because when we share the stories, we're really celebrating who and what we are. Whether they are challenging stories or they are funny or awesome, they're all celebrating what we do. And we don't do enough celebrating. One of the things I find is that we are great at beating ourselves up, right? It's easy to take a look at, oh, I can't figure it out. Something didn't go the way I wanted, and let me just beat myself up about what I should have, could have, would have done differently. That judgment gets you nowhere. When you think about what you've accomplished, the hard work you've done, how are you celebrating that? And are you taking the time to do that? Because what I find is that when we set up goals and we have something to celebrate, we work harder towards them. We're more likely to achieve them. And it makes it easier for us to start thinking about other challenges and obstacles when they arrive. So I actually hope that you have taken a few moments and thought about that, because I think knowing your story is important. Because you can tell everybody in the world what you do. That doesn't mean that's what you impact. So I would encourage any of the vendors who are in the room, when you have a chance to do your Facebook Live and have 90 seconds, think about the impact you have on the people you serve, not just what you do. Very different way to look at it. And I think when you tell that story, it will have a greater impact on the people. They'll pay attention a little differently. And they may be more interested in what you do because they see that you have helped someone else achieve what you're trying to accomplish. And just that hope of that we can get there usually can make all of the difference. So one of the things, I skipped a slide, sorry about that. I talked a little bit about this before at the beginning, where I knew last night I was going to gain some new knowledge, experience, and perspective. And yes, I gained a lot of knowledge and experience and perspective. If you don't know Wayne, you definitely need to talk to Wayne. He has some great experience. And I think it's fascinating because it's what makes him real. And we all have that. And we all have the ability to share it with someone else. One of the things I realized when my friend Bob and I started this program was that we didn't know who we were going to help at the moment, if it was anyone. But I truly believe that when you put that information out there, someone somewhere is desperately looking for it. And they don't know where to find it. And if we hold it back, we're really just being selfish. We're not sharing what we have been given to help someone else out. There's a great book out there by Bob Berg and John David Mann called The Go-Giver. It's a very short book. It's really a story. But to me, it was so impactful on who I was and what I did. Because it stopped being about, let me go get everything I can. And he talked all about, like, how do I share? How do I give of what I have? And when we give of what we have, others have more. So much more that they can't hold on to it. So that they also need to give of what they have. So that we have then the chance to receive that. We have a chance to be impacted by what's real for them so that we can grow our knowledge, experience, and perspective. And my belief is that these change daily. Every day we run into someone. And while what they say or what our interaction with them may just have a tiny impact, it has an impact on who we are, what's real for us. Sometimes when we run into them or we have situations, it has a huge impact. The pandemic clearly had a huge impact on what was real for all of us. And we had to figure out how we could move forward beyond that. So now what I'd like you to do is another little exercise, because I want you to actually this morning get up, be thinking about what you're doing. I'm curious about what's the current obstacles that you're facing
here.
For yourself, for your business.
Nothing there. I'm
And
kind of
actually, if you want,
okay.
write a little list, because I think one of the things I think is critically important is we have to recognize them, or else we won't address them. And they're not easy, especially when you get to the internal
I
ones,
just want to be able to control it.
because the internal ones are the ones they live up here. And if they live up here, they will drive you crazy, and they will likely hold you back. They will stop you from being able to move
Yeah,
forward.
now it's down there's where your leave button
So when you
is.
put them
That doesn't
down
have
on
your menu.
paper, you share them with someone else. I love what Bob shared about how he and his wife worked together on that. So that Bob didn't have to like struggle with, am I doing the right thing? And geez, I don't know. I'm supposed to be the president, but what do I really know about what I'm supposed to do? I'm just doing what I can. The fact that he shared that with someone else, now you can have a conversation about it. Now his wife can share her knowledge, experience, perspective, and how that might impact what Bob was going through and how he might look at it. It's amazing what a couple of questions will do to change the way we look at the world,
Well, this
because
has,
someone
this
is
is a
seeing it through a different
microphone,
lens.
but I think
We
that's
have the
unique
opportunity to not only do
about
that for
it. Yeah,
ourselves,
yeah.
we also have the opportunity to do it for others. So as you look at those obstacles, I'd encourage you to pick one. What's the obstacle that you're struggling with the most? And what I want to try to do is provide you with a little bit of a process that you can walk yourself through every time you face an obstacle to figure out how you're going to move forward. Because if you remember what I said at the beginning, every obstacle has an opportunity attached to it. We just have to take the time to figure out what that opportunity is. Wegmans figured out that we could still serve people. We just need to serve them differently. My travel agent client said, I can't serve them this way, but these other ways are great experiences that they can still do. And because what they realized was they weren't really selling travel. When they realized they were selling memories, things changed. When we think about vacations we took, it's not necessarily about where did we go. That's part of it. Who did we experience it with? And how did that change who and what we were? And so if you can start to look at each obstacle you have and try to change what it looks like, I think you have the opportunity to turn an obstacle into an opportunity. So the key thing then is, what are the next steps? Oops, sorry, I'm a little slow on my slides. What's the next step? Once we've identified it, we need to evaluate it and understand, okay, what have we tried to get, how have we tried to overcome this obstacle? What are the next things we knew? Somebody shared with me this morning, and I won't call them out, but that they don't like speaking in public. They can't imagine getting up on a stage and speaking in front of someone. And so my suggestion to them would be, okay, well, what have you noticed when you've done it? And 3 questions I always like to ask myself after every action I take. What went well? What didn't go as planned? And what would I do differently? And the reason I love asking those questions, because it's not a judgment on was it right, was it perfect, or was it wrong? It was all about, how do I move forward? How do I keep taking steps to try to improve what I'm trying to do? And at the end of this, I'll do the exact same thing. I'll sit down and try to think about what were things that went well, what didn't go as I planned, what would I do differently? And so I would encourage you to do that with the obstacles that you've had and what you've tried to do. What are the steps you've taken to try and overcome those obstacles? And are there other options to consider? The other thing, I jumped ahead a slide, I'm sorry. Then ask yourself the question, what knowledge, information, what knowledge, experience, or perspective do I not have that might help me move forward? Because whatever I'm doing isn't working, and I need to figure out something else. Usually that involves going and finding another resource, talking to someone, reading a book, looking at an example, a case study, something that you just don't know, because we all only know what we know. We can't be expected to know it all if we have never experienced it, right? We can't be expected to know exactly how this piece of machinery works until we've actually used it and taken the time to go in and figure out, like, okay, here are the things that work really well about it. Here are the things that I know are safety issues. And I need to make sure I'm focused on that and make sure that I'm sharing with others that this is something that they need to be careful about. So that's a key piece of it, is understanding what new knowledge, information, or experience or perspective we need to have to help us move forward. And then finally, I think we need to look at, what are the opportunities? When you truly look at that and understand you have a chance to look at things differently, there are ways that you can say, we might be able to do this differently. The organization decided we're not going to just let the government run over us. So they say, okay, well, what can we do differently? This is what we've tried. It hasn't really worked that well. We've gone as individuals. We've tried to support different campaigns. Didn't work. Didn't work as well as we hoped. Well, what if we gather all these groups together and we form a pack, and then we go and represent us as a group? It's a great idea. But I am sure that opportunity arose because you were stuck with an obstacle. And a group of people sat down and said, what have we tried and what isn't working? Somebody else said, wow, what are other people doing? How do I go out and find more information that I don't currently have? And then you're able to identify what is the opportunity that is in front of you that you might be able to achieve. Now, here's the other thing I know. I shared at the beginning that with every obstacle, there are opportunity. I also firmly believe that with every opportunity, there are current and future obstacles that could get in the way. And we can just say, oh, this is an amazing opportunity. If I buy this piece of equipment, it's going to move my mill forward. And that it might be true. But if we don't stop to think about it, like, well, do I have the right space? And if I put that in that space, how is that going to impact everyone else? And if I think about, like, well, what could be the issues with this? Maybe it doesn't work as well as the salesperson said, and so I don't get the return on my investment that I did. How would that impact me? The more we can understand what might be in front of us, currently stopping us, and the 3 big ones, time, money, are 2 of probably the biggest ones, is why we don't do something that we should consider, because we think time and money are in the way. We haven't stopped to think about some of the other things that we could potentially do along the way. Here's an issue that I know that you're dealing with. The minimum wage might go up. How is that going to impact you? You could say, you know what? We've tried, our PAC has tried, we've tried to address it. It's something that is greatly going to impact us, and it will and could. You could also say, well, what happens, maybe if the wage goes up a little bit, people are more committed Because they're earning more, they don't have to get a second job. Because they're earning more, they're more committed to what we're trying to do as an organization. And because they're earning more, we don't have to go out and try to hire as many people all the time and spend all that time, effort, and energy putting ads in the paper, interviewing people, doing background checks, onboarding new people. What does that cost? And do we factor that in when we think about the raise of the minimum wage? Now, I'm not saying the minimum wage raising is good, bad, or indifferent. I don't want to play politics. I just want to say that we can look at it as an external object that we have no control over, or we can choose to consider maybe there is an opportunity in here. We just haven't recognized it yet. We haven't thought about it yet in that light. And so understanding what are those future obstacles that might come with us will help us be better prepared as we move forward. So as you look at the obstacle you have in front of you and you understand what it is, you understand what you've tried that has either worked or not worked and how you might continue to address it. You think about what's the new knowledge, experience, perspective you have. You identify a new opportunity. Then you need to understand what are the obstacles that could slow you down, because they are an important piece of this. Once you know that opportunity, I love to set goals. And I love to make them very specific. You've probably all heard of SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And when you get a new opportunity, do you set a goal with that? Well, if I get this piece of equipment, my understanding is, my belief is that I'm going to be able to accomplish this. Okay. What is the goal with that then? My goal is to increase revenue by X by this date. Setting those goals allow us to not only be clear on where we want to go, but they also give us the opportunity to measure our progress towards that goal. Because sometimes opportunities look great. And even if we've expanded all the potential obstacles, we set a really good goal. Sometimes it doesn't work. But if we're not measuring it along the way, we don't know that. And if we don't know what we're trying to measure, it becomes really hard to decide, well, did this work or not? Now, without that, we're just considering anecdotal evidence, things that people are looking at. Well, it looks like it doesn't work. We don't seem to be doing as much. Do we have the hard evidence? Do we have the details? Do we have all of the information to make a decision on whether this has been an effective use of our resources or not? And by setting a goal and creating a specific time by which you want to accomplish it, it allows you to do that. And that's the important part. When is the time? When are you going to measure it? Because otherwise you can just go along for a long time. I don't know how many people in here set individual company goals at the start of the year. Anybody do that? Target goals for your organization. Here's where we want to be: revenue, expenses. How often do you evaluate it? The number of organizations I've seen, or even with your staff, how often do you sit down with your staff and say, how are you making progress to goals on a regular basis? One of the worst things I see throughout many industries is performance reviews. Let's do our annual performance review. We get together and we try in a couple of days to put together a review over what someone has done over an entire year. Half the time, all we really remember is maybe something really bad they did a long time ago, or likely what they have achieved in the last very short time frame. How could we ever remember all the things they've done over 365 days? So one of the things I always try to do is I set milestones with each of my team members. We would meet quarterly and we would talk about, what is your progress towards goal? What are the challenges you're facing? What could you do differently? How can I help? So now we're helping employees move through that process rather than just putting them out there, letting them figure it out. And it's the same with goals. You need to know when you want to achieve it by. And I'm going to get back to this because to me, this is one of the most important things that we need to do. How will we celebrate when we achieve that goal? Because I know if we don't achieve something we're trying to, we're going to beat ourselves up. And we're going to spend a lot of time telling us, why didn't we do it this way? We could have done it that way. All we're doing is passing judgment on something we did, rather than looking at the action as an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to understand, okay, this is what went well, this is what didn't go as planned, and this is what I might do differently. And so when we do achieve those goals, we need to celebrate. We need to find ways to celebrate for ourselves the accomplishment, because what you're doing is not easy. Even though I'm not in the industry, I recognize the hard work that you put in the challenges that you face. Yet I would imagine that not many of you take the opportunity to sit down and celebrate the successes you have and reward yourself for what you have done. It's a very difficult thing for us to do. For some reason, as humans, we don't like to do that. Or we want to celebrate. Let's go out as a family and have a nice dinner. That's great. Let's go out as a company and celebrate. Those are all great. We need to do those things. But the more people you add to a celebration, the less it is about you. It's more it is about how do we make it good for everybody? Well, what's the right restaurant we want to go to? And what's the right time in the day? You get to choose that when you set a celebration for yourself so that you can figure out and say, you know what, I did this. Because once we do that and we figure it out, it's easier to do the next time. And we look more forward to that celebration. So celebrating to me is a huge part of what it is. And here's the thing, is so if you've gone through, as you think about obstacles that are going to face you, and you start to think about what am I going to do the next time I get stuck? I'm going to offer you that there's the one way, the way I shared before, is that you can identify it, understand what you have done, think a little bit about what you need, what new information you need to have, what are the opportunities ahead, set a goal, create some action items, set a deadline, and how you're going to celebrate. There's no doubt that's one way to do it. The hard part is you'll leave this conference, you'll go back to your offices, you'll have a million things going on, right? You've been away for 3 or 4 days. How much is falling behind? I know there are a few of you who have cameras in their shops, so they can exactly see what's happening. And you'll still be behind. So you're going to forget all of that. And the question I would ask is, where is your hotline for your business? I guarantee you, if you go down to any vendor who's selling you a piece of equipment, they have customer service, and they also have a hotline that you can call. So that you can be like, I'm stuck, what do I do? And my question is, what are you doing for that regard in your business? How are you helping yourself stay resilient? So that when the next obstacle comes up, you can figure out how to respond and take the next step to move forward. Because ultimately, we all need it. Every day we're going to face obstacles that can either block us or that we can use them to help us move forward. I hope that you are going to choose to figure out how to move forward and find those opportunities and celebrate the way you need to help you stay resilient and move forward. What I would offer is that if you are stuck, one of the greatest way I find is to talk to someone else, to be a part of something else. And I'll just post up here, whether you're Facebook people or not, I'm willing to share it because it's part of what's real for me. We created this group of Ring of Renegades. If you'd like to join, there's no cost. It's just to be a part of a group, a community of people who are figuring out how to move forward. This association is a community like that. You come together to share what are the challenges and the struggles, and then how do you move forward? Finding that. If you don't feel like you have that, I just offer that as an opportunity. One of the things that I have found is in my coaching work, I could spend an hour with someone, and we might not meet again for another couple of weeks. Well, that hour is great until the next thing comes up. So one of the things I'm offering, because you're here today, I'm going to be here through Friday. If you would like, I like to sit down with people and in over 15 to 20 minutes, look at an obstacle and try to help them come up with what the next step is. So if you're interested, I'm happy to provide that for a few of you. Just come up, let me know. We'll find a time. We'll go sit in a corner. And chances are what I'm going to do is ask you questions, because you know what's real for you in your organization. And I don't have the answers, but I think I can ask the right questions to help you understand what are the answers that you need for yourself. The other thing I would offer is, my friend wrote this book. I wrote the foreword to it, and it's really a year of our talking together about how to move forward, how to overcome obstacles. And so you're interested, I do have a few copies of those. With that, I want to thank you for being a great audience, for paying attention. Nobody got up and walked out, which you could have. That would have been fair. If that was what was real for you and you wanted to get up and leave, I'm all right with that. I also know that every message that I share, not everybody is ready for it. Not everybody agrees with it, and that's okay. I just want to share what's real for me because I believe that there are people out there who need this message. Maybe it's this group. Maybe it's somebody you share it with. Maybe you don't use it for 6 months, but you're like, what did that guy say about obstacles? I can't really remember, but maybe I need to figure it out. So with that, I wish you the best of 2021. Great resiliency. I hope that you will see all of your goals and dreams come true and that you will find time to celebrate because we need to do that. Thank you. If anyone, I don't know where we are with time, or I'm probably over. Okay, is there anyone, are there questions anybody has? Any question I could try to address? Yes.
I'm curious, the process is interesting to hear the processes of obstacles that you and your particularly the man, the gentleman at the travel agency.
Yes.
You know, hotel, cruise lines being shut down. So bottom line, getting cut right to the chase. How, with the changes and the adjustments he made, I mean, you can bill for your services for cruise lines and destination trips. How did that materialize for when you're taking a road trip in a car?
Well, the beauty is with the internet, you can do just about anything. You can work from your, so the person was working while they were doing it. They were sharing their story, right? And I think that's the piece of it is they were able to tell a story that nobody knew existed. Because people couldn't, everybody's sitting at home saying, well, we can't go on vacation because we can't leave the state. We have to quarantine. We have to do this, right? Everybody has all these other obstacles they create. This person was able to say, you know what? I'm going to share that there's another way to do it. And if I can do it, someone else could follow along and do the same thing. And so they had the opportunity to run their business. And the other thing they knew, a lot of what they were doing was planting seeds. Because people weren't booking. The person, they've shared that they're doing more rebooking than they are doing a booking, hoping that in the fall of 2021, things will happen. In the spring of 2022, it'll open up. Their idea was that they were going to plant seeds about possibilities, about opportunities, and
We're really getting the revenue right there.
Correct. They were setting the stage for the future revenue. And they did have some people who were like, geez, I never thought about that. I could drive to wherever and spend 4 days driving around even my own state to see things that I had never experienced, but I had never thought about it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for asking. Anyone else? All right. Well, if not, thank you very much for paying attention, and I will be around all day. I look forward to interacting with you. Have a great rest of the conference.